Hello, my name is Andrew, and I will be presenting alternative structural adjustment and development policies for the sub-Saharan and West African country of Burkina Faso. You see, Burkina Faso's life expectancy is at 55 years old, and the literacy rate is at 28% of the total population. These numbers reflect some of the lowest indexes in the world and a serious lack of development. Through intensive research as the development specialist of Burkina Faso, I came up with a few recommendations regarding development. My recommendations will focus on ways to improve economic and social conditions. Some of these recommendations are an extension of already introduced policies, and the other recommendation focuses on new approaches. I will be discussing policy measures in agriculture, then industrial policy, followed by budgetary and fiscal policies, and finally, social measures. First, I will talk about policy measures in agriculture. There should be farming and infrastructure incentives. Burkina Faso and its farmers face market failures due to climate and the supply and demand constraint affecting agriculture. Government intervention on agriculture markets is necessary. Manipulation of agriculture and food prices is one of the major policy instruments available to a government for stimulating output, reallocating resources, and shifting purchasing power within the economy. In the country, price support is the key to stimulating export production, increasing rural incomes, and generating government revenues throughout taxation of surpluses. According to UNICEF, if price incentives were to be implemented properly, the main problem would become reduction of the budgetary item associated with the collection of the output of government. In addition to price incentives, food security could become realistic only if the government invested in transportation infrastructure and encouraged private traders to move local grains from areas of surplus to areas of demand, such as the cities where incomes are relatively higher. As for support of small-scale production, people argue that economic adjustment focuses on cash crops over food crops. Small-scale producers lose the most and benefit the least. Focusing on cash crops will only result in a greater dependence on unstable world markets and will lead to the poverty of staple producers, and women will suffer the most. It is said that smallholders have higher yields per hectare than large farms. Therefore, supporting small-scale production, regardless of the type of crop, will lead to social benefits. There are mostly small-scale farmers in Burkina Faso, and support for this class may raise food production. Likewise, cotton cultivation can even improve the production of food staples. Improving technology. The government should encourage farmers to use sustainable technologies. Water dikes and water channels should be put in place throughout the whole country, but mainly in drier areas such as the northern part, which is the Sahel region. These small dikes and water channels will prevent soil erosion and retain water and moisture. Low-scale technologies help to assure food self-sufficiency at the farm level. Through credit programs, like I mentioned earlier, the government could help farmers purchase the simple equipment needed to apply these technologies. I will now discuss industrial policy. The government is trying to encourage private initiative, but more support services will help a lot, such as the creation of management training centers, which would take advantage of economies of scale. But informal sectors mustn't be neglected. This means that the tariffs, import quotas, and fiscal budgetary incentives and access to credit should not only be geared towards a formal sector, but also the informal ones too. According to the World Bank, attention to the informal sector would help diversify both industry and foreign exchange earnings, an important objective of true structural adjustment. Let's not forget that increasing investment in the informal sector is a cheap way to create more job opportunities. Now I'm going to talk about budget and fiscal policies. I strongly believe Burkina Faso should reconsider the structure of spending because further investment in rural transportation and social infrastructure is crucial, and the need for additional fiscal resources will grow. The government needs to save to generate these resources. A cut in unproductive public spending and excessive salaries manipulated by corruption constitute major items of the budget. First, the country should align public sector salaries to the resource level of the country. Then, efforts to reduce waste in public sector should be worked on. And lastly, taxation should be changed. For salary earners, taxation should take family charges into account and tax recovery should be improved. Finally, I will discuss social measures. Sustained economic growth is impossible without human resources in sufficient quantity and quality. It is clear by now that despite much progress, Burkina Faso is still far behind other sub-Saharan countries in social development. I want to talk about demographic dividend. Demographic dividend, as defined by the United Nations Population Fund, means the economic growth potential that can result from shifts in a population's age structure, mainly when the share of working age population is larger than the non-working age share of the population. In other words, it is a boost in economic productivity that occurs when there are growing numbers of people in the workforce relative to the number of dependents. UNFPA stated that a country with both increasing numbers of young people and declining fertility has the potential to reap a demographic dividend. This is the case in the United States when it switched from the agrarian to an industrial economy. However, demographic dividend is not automatic. So what does it take to realize that dividend? There are three key investments: improved child survival, family planning, meaning spacing births and preventing unintended pregnancies, and education for girls. When girls pursue longer studies, they are less likely to marry early, have children early, and have healthier families. Improvement in healthcare is responsible for the first two. Curative healthcare in Burkina Faso is very expensive, which is the main reason for the lack of development in this field. But highly cost-efficient preventive healthcare should be strengthened by encouraging more efforts like the 1985 vaccination campaign and putting more emphasis on improved water supply and rural hygiene. General education is responsible for the last point. Government subsidized programs for school supply and enrollment should be put in place in order to educate the whole population and to reap the full benefits of education in order to reach a full potential of the country of Burkina Faso. And these are my recommendations for structural and policy adjustments for the country of Burkina Faso. Thank you all for watching.